John, we got a good guest to begin, like do we call it spring training, preseason, the season, wherever we are. Aaron Boone is joining us on what is day one of Yankee camp.
That's great. Great get by you. He's terrific. Really looking forward to what he has to say about the third base situation, the new players that they have, the loss of Soto, the Dodger trash talking, and all of that. So, really looking forward to this one. He's a terrific, terrific interview.
Yeah, and he'll be talking about all they did in the offseason. So will John and I will break down where we think the Yankees are right now after their offseason, where the Mets are after their offseason, and now both beginning spring training. We'll play hit and error at the end if you stick with us on the show with Joel, Sherman, and John. Hey, Yankee fans, spring training is here and not to be missed. The New York Post has partnered with TrueFan Travel to build the ultimate Yankee fan experience this spring down in Clearwater Beach, Florida. TrueFan Travel is offering a 5-night stay at the Hilton Clearwater Beach Resort, tickets to 2 Yankee spring training games, and a meet and greet with former Yankee Lou Piniella. I've known Lou for almost 4 decades. He's a great storyteller. He would be a great person to be around to hear all the great stuff. I'll tell you one good Lou Piniella story that I really like. Lou was the manager of the Yankees a few times, obviously, 86 to 88. He didn't leave the organization. George Steinbrenner loved Lou Piniella. And so Lou stayed. MSG was broadcasting the games then, and Lou was part of the broadcast team in 1989. But because of who he was stature-wise in the Yankee organization and how everyone knew he was so close to George Steinbrenner, Lou decided that year he would never go in the clubhouse because it would look like maybe he was trying to Bigfoot or get the job, and he stayed out of the clubhouse. Dallas Green was the manager. Bucky Dent finished out that year after Dallas Green was fired. Lou stayed out, and you know what? It worked perfect for him. The Yankees didn't rehire Lou. The Reds hired Lou, and in 1990, the Reds won the World Series with Lou Piniella as their manager. So I'm sure Lou could regale you with stories about the Reds, how he used the Nasty Boys, but certainly his time as a player and manager of the Yankees. So join us on this special 5-day extravaganza from March 16th to 21st with access to an all-inclusive St. Patrick's Day party that includes food, drinks, and live entertainment. Yankee fans, you will not want to miss this trip of a lifetime. For more details, go to truefantravel.com or click on the link in the description below. John, if anyone's watching our beautiful faces right now, there's no hiding it. I'm in a hotel room in Tampa. You're in a office someplace in the complex in St. Lucie, the Mets complex in St. Lucie. Spring training has begun. And even though there's still some really good players out on the free agent market, maybe someone like Nolan Arenado will still get traded. It feels like this is the right time to at least put a bow to some degree on what the Mets and Yankees did this offseason, how we feel about it. And look, we got to it last week, John. We kind of jumped back on and talked about Alonso. But why don't we start with the Mets? You're there. This was kind of the bookends. They kind of got Soto done at the winter meetings. They got Alonso done in time for spring training. It felt like that made this, and they dealt with a lot of pitching in between. It felt like it made it a really strong offseason for a team that went to the National League Championship Series last year. What do you think?
I mean, they should be much improved, I think. I mean, Soto himself, obviously, you don't give a guy $765 million if you don't expect him to make an enormous impact. And Francisco Alvarez was here yesterday and said that they have the best lineup in the game. Carlos Mendoza didn't repeat that today when we asked. He said there's a lot of teams with good lineups, but they like theirs, obviously. I mean, certainly to add Soto and to bring back Alonso, this may be the best lineup in baseball. I mean, I don't want to say anything against the Dodgers. You know, certainly they're up there as well, but it's certainly a very, very exciting offseason for the Mets to not only take the highest paid player of all time, to take him from the Yankees. I mean, it was huge for the Mets. A lot of excitement about this team. I think it's deserved. Still have some questions about that rotation, which we're going to be writing about a lot, but they should be a better team. Plus, they have Vientos for the full season, and I mean, he looks like a star. So that lineup is spectacular. It may not be the best in baseball, but it's certainly in the conversation.
You know, John, I think because it happened at the winter meetings and, the fans emotionally moved right on to Alonso, it's hard to say that the signing of Soto to some degree has been underappreciated, but you and I spend a lot of time around both teams, and, Met fans are probably not watching Yankee games to the volume that you and I are watching them. I said to somebody this morning, I probably saw 80%, 85%, 90% of Soto's at bats last year. I could probably count on one or two hands how many bad at bats he had. I mean, if you're going to strike him out, you've got to throw a great pitch with two strikes, a great pitch. Because if you throw it on the first strike, he smiles, shakes his head, puts it in his computer. And if you try it again, he usually does damage to it. And I just think, like, to your point about what the lineup could be, is it the best, the second best? The Yankees did not have a terrifically long lineup last year, and yet they were among the leaders in runs per game. That had a lot to do with Aaron Judge, but had so much to do with Soto. He just does not have bad at bats. And when you watch it day to day and you think like him and Lindor are going to begin a game. And, we saw what Lindor looked like for the first 5 months and then the postseason. I mean, try to get those guys out 10 times a game. You're going to see them 10 times. Is Vientos who he was last year? Was Alonso pressing a little last year because of free agency? There is a possibility of this team kind of like rising to the top 3 or 4 runs per game in the National League.
Yeah, absolutely. Mendoza, we talked to him earlier. He didn't want to commit to the lineup as Boone did early last year. I guess, obviously he hasn't had a chance to talk to Soto about this, I guess, but I'm with you. I think that's what you implied, that certainly he did say Lindor is the leadoff hitter. We know that. I'm with you. Soto should be batting second. I know originally liked batting third, but I mean, you got to get him up there as much as you can. He is an all-time great hitter. I mean, the reasons that he got the biggest contract in not only baseball history, sports history are twofold. He is very, very young. He just turned 26. I believe it was in the World Series or just after it. And he is an all-time great hitter. And it's just amazing to watch. Everybody who saw it against Cleveland, hitting that home run, fouling off every pitch, that he decided, you know what, I don't like this pitch that much. I'm going to foul it off. And I mean, he's a savant, and it's fantastic to watch. And I do think he's one of the few players in baseball who by himself is a draw. I mean, obviously Ohtani is in a class by himself, but I mean, there are a few others, Judge included, Soto. That's a number you can probably count on your hand as well. And he is in that category. And it really just changes the excitement and the equation for the Mets.
Yeah, and one thing I'll give you, mentioned two of the two most important assets for Soto, is greatness and his age. I'll say something him, Lindor, and Alonso have as much as anyone in the sport. They are durable. Those 3 guys post and play every day. I'm going to throw in one other thing that I think got kind of, again, I'm going to use the word underappreciated. I'm not sure that that's the right term, John, because the Mets didn't go out and get an ace this offseason. They brought back Sean Manaea. They brought in Frankie Montas, who they like very much and think is a number 3 starter. We'll see if he's this year's Severino kind of guy. Kodai Senga is coming back. And the guy we saw in 2023, especially the second half of that season, was an ace. And if he's anything like that guy, I think they become the NL East favorite.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think you're right. I mean, Philly, I liked Luzardo move. They looked like a very solid team, but let's be frank, they were awful against the Mets in the playoffs. It's a little concern there. And Atlanta did very little. They brought Profar in. Certainly the Mets did the most. The Mets advanced past both of those teams last year. I think they might even be the favorite now, but certainly Senga is the big wild card, obviously. I mean, you got a guy who could be an ace and a guy who may not be able to pitch, right? And, when we talked to Mendoza earlier, he didn't know. He's hopeful that he's going to be able to start the season with the team, but you just don't know because last year when he threw 5 innings in the regular season, Mendoza made a joke about it was 5 electric innings or something like that. But no matter how good those 5 innings are, it's not much. You're right. Reliability is a huge factor. And those guys that you mentioned, Lindor, Alonso, Soto, extremely durable. They're also very, very tough. And pitching is, I'm not saying Senga's not, pitching is a different story, but those are guys who play hurt and do play every day.
Senga is the wild card to avoid being the wild card, right?
Yeah.
John, flipping over to the Yankees, this would be the thing that scares me about the Yankees is usually when there's universality of thought, that doesn't happen. right? And I've got to tell you, I'm in the universe. I think they had a great offseason. Well, I'll say this. They had a great offseason for a team that got rebuked by
Yeah.
Soto, that they moved on and did it. I even like Tyler Matzik as a minor league sign. By the way, I think that he got talked up a lot by his ex teammate Max Fried to management. I think he got talked up by Garrett Cole, who played in high school against him. So I kind of liked everything they did as a counter to losing this player. And then, look, we'll see it over the long season. But the question is, can they win get to mid 90s wins and win the AL East again after losing arguably one of the 5 greatest hitters, 10 greatest hitters, 25 and under that's ever played in the whole sport? I think for a team that lost that player, they did a remarkably good job of using what finances Hal Steinbrenner allowed them to get more diverse, better run prevention, and a little better kind of like baseball IQ, baseball fundamental, Goldschmidt and Bellinger.
Yeah, I mean, I think Fried was a great signing, and a lot of people could say, well, they overpaid, and they could quibble whether how durable he is. Well, when he's qualified for the ERA title 4 out of the last 5 years. He's an ERA plus lifetime of around 140. I think that's eighth best all time. We're talking he's behind like Lefty Grove and Kershaw. He's behind people like that. He's an outstanding pitcher to have that 1-2 combination with Cole, presuming health by Cole as well. That is huge, and that's why they're going to be the favorite in the American League. And I think Bellinger was just a great fit. You said it at the winter meetings. I mean, don't they have to get Bellinger? And that was the first thing you said to me. You didn't say hello, even. I don't think. Don't they have to get Bellinger? Is the anything you had greeted me with in Dallas? And I'm like, yeah, you know what? That makes sense. He can play center. He can play first. At that time, they hadn't signed Goldschmidt. Perfect fit is a cliche, but I will use it. It fits in this case. And they did a very good job. I think Goldschmidt had a good second half. Devin Williams, not counting that one pitch to Alonso, was typically great with a very low ERA. I think they are the favorite in that league. You can't say the Mets are the favorite because the Dodgers are ridiculous, but they might be the favorite in their division. I wouldn't be shocked if they are. It should be a very exciting season for our teams.
Well, we know, John, we could be surprised because if we were doing this show at this time last year, I don't think we might have said, hey, I think the Yankees could get to the World Series, but you wouldn't have said it about the Mets. And the Mets got to the NLCS. So we know you could be surprised. Sitting here today, it is not far-fetched to think the Yankees and Mets can make the World Series. Now, the Dodgers are an incredible impediment in the National League. And, you mentioned the Braves, like they profile, they're also going to get Strider and Acuna back at some point this year. They played a lot of last season without him. We know they have a winning pedigree. We know the Phillies have all these tough veterans who know how to kind of get through the season. But the Mets are a legitimate heavyweight now. And we didn't feel that way about them 12 months ago. And the Yankees are kind of 1-26, a pretty formidable team.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people would be predicting a Subway Series if it weren't for the Dodgers. I mean, to me, the Dodgers, they were down to no pitchers by the end of the year and still won the World Series in 5 games. And then they had an incredible winter. The Mets and the Yankees had very good winters too. But to add to that team, those players that they added, including Snell and Sasaki, they're going to be the heavy favorite, deservedly so. But certainly both our teams should be in the playoffs, make for a very exciting season.
Yeah, one of those teams is, of course, managed by Aaron Boone. His 8th year is coming up. It began today as we're sitting here in spring training. He's going to talk about his team with us on the show with Joel Sherman and Jon Heyman. John and I are so happy to be joined by Aaron Boone, who obviously is busy. This is report day for the Yankees. As I know, because I was there, all the pitchers and catchers showed up. And I know because I talked to Aaron this morning, he's a very, very happy Philadelphia Eagle fan. I think he told me this was the best team of your life, right? That the best Eagle team that you've ever seen. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think so. I said that to my son a few weeks ago. I was like, I think this is the most complete team they've ever had. And I was at the NFC Championship game in 1980 when they beat the Cowboys at the Vet, freezing cold, with my brother and my dad. So I go back to being a fan then and even a little before then. And yeah, this felt like the most complete team.
You mentioned complete team, and watch this segue that they call it in the pod business. You were talking about your team a little earlier, and I love the quote you used. You said we have high hopes and big dreams, is what you said. You obviously changed the team from Soto to something else. Why do the Yankees have high hopes and big dreams as this thing opens up?
Um, well, look, I mean, obviously we got to the World Series last year, and one of the big reasons why was Juan Soto, and we made that calculation of going into that last winter of saying, this kind of obviously, I mean, he fits every team, right, but really fit our team, and we knew we had to pay a big price for it, and we went in eyes wide open, like, hey, even though the baseball world people thought like this is just going to end with him with us, we didn't necessarily treat that as a given at all, but felt like that was the move for us in the offseason that would really make a difference. We obviously went all in and trying to bring him back, and went to a pretty high place. But I'm really excited about the pivot that's been talked about. I keep hearing that word, the pivot, to what Brian and front office were able to do. I think you go into every offseason, and sometimes it's depending on what's available out there or what's available to you, whether it's in the trade market, whether it's in the free agent market. And sometimes you're able to hammer a strength. You're able to accentuate something that's real strong for you, depending on how things line up. Sometimes you're able to address weaknesses. Sometimes you're able to plug holes. The reality is you're always just trying to improve your club the best you can, certainly here. And, I think we've done a really good job of that. I love who we brought in. I'm very optimistic and hopeful about the people that we did bring in that I feel like have a chance to be impact players for us. But, it's February, like it's such a long, long way to go. And, for us to just sit here and say, oh, we're better than we were last year or we're worse without, like, the reality is we got to the World Series last year, and we certainly feel like we have a team capable of that if we realize our potential. But it's a blank slate, and here we go, and we got to go out and do it.
Well, congratulations on your Eagles. I'll tell you my brief Eagle history. My wife from Wisconsin, we went to see the Eagles against the Packers in the playoffs and sat in the end zone, and she wore her cheese head. And it did not go well for us. Unfortunately for your team, the Eagles lost. That was an Aaron Rodgers team, and they went on to win the Super Bowl. But the fans were quite energetic. I'll just put it that way. They weren't rude, but they were quite energetic.
Yeah, they're a little interesting.
You're a very nice, polite person. You're not a typical, but they were fine. They were fine. I want to ask you about the last question. I'm going to ask you about Soto. It's not a given, as you said, but the difference is only $5 million. Are you? I mean, it seemed like you had a great time in your clubhouse. He obviously performed superbly at Aaron Judge behind him. We all hear that he loved Judge. I mean, were you at least mildly surprised? And have you figured out exactly why he made the choice that he did make?
I don't know if even surprised. Like I agree with you in that I think he really enjoyed it. He was obviously massively successful. Yeah, I think arguably the best season of his career to this point in his illustrious young career. I loved my relationship with him. Like such a great player to have in there day in and day out, the way he goes about his business. But in the end, I don't know if it's just as simple as $5 million. Like, I know there's a lot of other things in there and opt-outs and clauses and accoutrements that, sweeten it a little bit. And I don't know if it ever would have stopped. If we kept up the ante, where was it going to end? The reality is I'm proud of where we went and the measures that we took to try and bring him back to also fit in the construct of our team. Sorry, my phone. Am I there? There.
Yes.
But in the end, it just got to a point where he obviously earned the right to make the best decision And you never know all the reasons that go into someone making a decision. It's more than sometimes just baseball, and your family plays a role, and different things you want to accomplish. And he earned that right, and he made his decision. But I'm also really excited about the pivot again that we made, and I feel like put us in a position to go compete for something special this year.
So why don't we jump in on some of the things you did to replace Soto? The one that I find really fascinating is, if Cody Bellinger was a free agent and offering himself for 2 years at $52 million, I think almost every team would have done it. And somehow, strangely, there wasn't a tremendous market for him. And the Cubs ended up having to eat $5 million. And no disrespect to Cody Petit, take a sixth or seventh or eighth starter. Oh, I see a pretty good major league player there. What do you see, and why are you playing him in center instead of Dominguez?
Yeah, I'm really bullish on Cody. I think he fits our ballpark incredibly well. He's a guy that's been through a lot in his career. He's at an age to where he's in the prime of his career. So just more than just a hitter, like he brings a lot to the table with his defensive prowess and that versatility, athleticism, runs the bases. And we really feel like his swing is going to play up in our yard. And we also feel like, in kind of watching how Wrigley's played the last 2 seasons, it has not been very hitter friendly at all. So hopefully getting with us in a ballpark that matches up well with him, that serves him well as being just energized by being a place that I think he really wants to be. I think he's fired up to be here. As far as the center field piece, so my calculus on that is, I feel like I want to try and get, some of our best players in some of the best, most premium spots, So whereas I do envision Cody playing potentially a number of positions for us this year because he gives you that flexibility, I also want, let's take a day where I'm DH and Judge and Giancarlo's down. We're facing a tough righty. It's a day off for Stanton. I'm giving Judge a DH day. I can slide Bellinger over, and I'd rather have Trent Grisham go play center field, who, the reason he's on this roster is, or one of the big reasons is, he's an elite defensive center fielder. So I don't want to weaken that. A lot of the talk around Jason and, there's no doubt in my mind he'll be able to handle left. He just didn't have a lot of experience out there. And it is a little bit of a tricky position to play, especially in our ballpark. But, most every outfielder that you talk to that's played outfield, center's easier to play. You got to have the better skill set to play it, but it's an easier position to play. So there's no doubt in my mind that Jason over time will be fine in left field, especially with a long runway where he's going to get that work in spring training. But on the chance that it's not, and he's ready to be in the big leagues, though, I can always move him back to center and make that adjustment. But part of my calculus is, I feel like the combination of Bellinger and Grisham on the days he plays in center field, and not wanting to move Jason back and forth if I can help it, that's my calculus, at least going into spring training right now.
I agree with you. I thought they did a great job with the pivot. So I want to ask you, do you think this team could actually be better now than last year? And if you don't want to answer that, why do you think it could be as good?
I mean, do I think it could be better? Sure. But I think it's important. Like, we went to the World Series last year, so it's just such a long road ahead of us. Do I think we have the pieces in place to, again, compete for it all? I do. Where it ends up, then you make the determination of how good it really was. On paper right now, we have that opportunity. I believe that. But, especially as managers, as coaches, like, you're so focused on like the early camp and all that goes into that, and the preparation and getting guys prepared and ready, that's down the road, and certainly not for me to project what I think we're going to be. Like, the proof will be in the pudding, and we'll talk about it when the road ends.
Aaron, keeping in mind, of course, you did go to the World Series. The organization went for the first time since 2009.
Yeah.
I mean, during the course of the season, there did seem a lot of base running issues, some technical issues on defense. Is that fixable during the season if you don't have the right players? Obviously, you've reached out. Goldschmidt's known as a superb, smart, high IQ player. Bellinger is an all-around player. So you've done a pivot in some way. There goes that word again, away from something. Did you see trouble coming in these areas, which kind of really manifest in Game 5 of the World Series in the worst possible way?
Um, look, I think the narrative now after whatever Game 5 or after the end of the season is we're a terrible base running team and we don't play good defense. Let's start with the defensive part of things. That's been a narrative after the 21 season, which we were not a very good defensive team. We've by and large, year in and year out, been pretty good defensively. Now we've had some elite guys in certain positions, and you have guys that are average or below average sometimes in some people that rears its head sometimes. So the defensive part, I don't buy as much. Like, again, that goes into the offseason. Like last season, our offense was about bringing in a game-changing hitter that changed the complexion of our team. But we didn't go spend on making sure we had the best defender here, and there. That said, I think we were probably middle of the pack, maybe even by some accounts better than average defensive team. And I would argue some years over the last few, we've been near the top defensively. The base running part, I break it up in a couple of chunks. So, and then anytime it gets brought up, and I know you've brought it up, Joel, and it happens. Something happens in a game. It becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy, like see, and then it's just right. So in 23, I feel like we made a lot of mistakes on the bases that, in my mind, got cleaned up for a lot of last year. A lot of those mistakes. Now, a lot of the reasons why I think we ranked low in base running last year, before Jazz got there, we were a very slow team. And you get a base hit to right field in Yankee Stadium and you don't go first and third, that dings you. But it doesn't account for it's first to third in Yankee Stadium, which is it's a little different animal going first to third in right field. You hit into a double play, you get dinged for that. You aggressively go on a contact play on a 50-50 ball with 2 outs, say you're out at the plate, you get dinged for that. I would argue that's probably a good base running decision play. So a lot of the base running stuff is very nuanced. We pour a lot into the base running and have for the last couple of years. In fact, one of our guys, we had a player development guy that we lost that was kind of headed up our base running that changed a lot of the things we did. And there were even playoff games that we won some games on the bases too, with some double steals, with some big contact things that happen. Then all of a sudden you get picked off or something and it raises the red flag. So bottom line is we're obsessed with getting better at all of it. And you pour into all of that. And can you improve? Absolutely. You should be able to improve on anything when you get to work at it every single day and pour into it every single day. And that's always the hope and the expectation. You're trying to have the most complete, buttoned up, prepared team that you can possibly have. Sometimes you have strengths and weaknesses, though, that pop up.
I got to ask you about the Dodgers celebrating, or we could call it a little trash talking there at the end. Yeah, I mean, that's not your style. You're a cool and classy guy, and this only didn't come from Freddie Freeman or Mookie Betts or Ohtani. But what are your thoughts on? I think Joe Kelly was one of the ones. I don't even remember him. Did he play in the World Series, Joel? I don't even remember. Was he in the World Series?
No, he did not.
Okay.
In the World
All right.
Series.
I actually didn't remember. But what are your thoughts on? They seem to be quite pleased with themselves and not that impressed by you guys.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't love it, but that's it. I mean, they're the champs. The reality is they have a great team. They have a great organization. They're incredibly well run and operated. They have a ton of people in that organization, players, coaches, doc, front office, that I have a ton of respect for. Did I like some of the things that were said in the way they were said? No. But the reality is we didn't play our best. They beat us. They're the champs. And I guess they have the right to say whatever they want.
You know, Aaron, this was not a question I had on my list of things, but I was in your clubhouse today, and it's this is my 36th year around the team in some way, form, or fashion. And I saw something today I don't think I've ever seen in the Yankee clubhouse. Devin Williams had a full beard. So I'm just curious. It's not official till tomorrow. Is there anything going on here that we should know about? That are you having any problems with Devin Williams shaving or anything?
I hope not. He doesn't have to shave till tomorrow morning. So
okay. I've
No.
seen Giambi push it. I've seen Clemens push it, but this was Ulysses S. Grant kind of level stuff here.
Yeah, no, I don't foresee any issues, but now that you bring it up, like, I haven't had to have the conversation. I haven't had to have which I actually do periodically throughout the year. Like, you know, I'll walk up to a guy like, let's clean it up a little bit, right? So I'm charged sometimes with making sure that happens. So I haven't had to have any of those conversations yet because guys have been over at the minor league facility and just kind of, you know, this is I have a beard much of off season or growth much of off season. So that's our time to let it eat a little bit. And starting tomorrow, we got to button it up.
I'll throw in my 2 cents. That rule's got to go. That rule should have gone 30 years ago. That's not you saying that. That's me, and I don't have a beard.
You know, there's so many people over the years that, you know, whether we bring them in for a trade and they, you know, it's like the thought of it, and then more often than not, honestly, guys kind of like it, and it just kind of differentiates us a little bit. There's always been guys over the years you think are going to like, oh, he's the guy that's going to challenge it. And generally speaking, everyone falls in line. And, you know, I think in the end, it differentiates us and we appreciate getting to do it.
All right. We'll have the beard debate another time. Third base, what's going on there? You have faith that LeMahieu can be the guy? I don't anticipate you signing Bregman. So, I mean, even if you bring somebody in, LeMahieu's got a shot winning that job, doesn't he?
Yeah, so does Oswaldo Cabrera. And, you know, Oswald Peraza, Jorge Vivas, you know, different guys that'll, you know, maybe somebody just steps up and grabs it. Maybe it becomes a combination position or it becomes a platoon position. We'll see. DJ's healthy right now. He looks good. You know, the reality is he hasn't been healthy the last couple of years. I mean, and we're talking about a great hitter, you know, a great hitter and a great defender at that. And, you know, so I'm not going to rule out the fact that with health, he can play a huge role for us, whether that's on an everyday front, whether that's platooning in some front, whether that's having some kind of a role. We'll see. We'll let that play out. Oswaldo Cabrera has proven to be an outstanding utility player. He'll get some opportunities, especially against right-handed pitching. And he's also an outstanding defender over there. So we'll just kind of let it play out. You know, you're never a finished product, you know, even when the season begins. So we'll see. We'll see how spring unfolds, who grabs it. Hopefully something kind of whacks us over the head and declares it. And then it could continue to evolve.
You know, Aaron, DJ LeMahieu solved an issue early in your tenure as Yankee manager. You inherited Brett Gardner, who led off the majority of the games your first year. And then LeMahieu played like a MVP for a few years and became your leadoff hitter. But really for now, like the last 3 years, you haven't had one. And you've mixed and matched. There's been Luke Voigt, there's been Anthony Rizzo, Jake Bowers. You've gone to guys who are not traditional prototype leadoff guys. You're not sitting with an obvious answer today. What is the answer?
I don't know. I really don't. You could throw 6 or 7 names at me right now, and I'd say there's probably a chance that they could be the leadoff hitter. And then it could end up being a fact because as it looks right, like we're very left-handed, more than we have been in a long, long time. So it could be a situation where, it's this left-hander against right-handed pitching, and it's a right-hander against left-handed pitching, or someone does just grab it and it becomes very clear. Like Glaber, just grabbed it the last 2 months of the season and then on to the postseason, was so good in that role. Hopefully that happens again. But I do feel like there's a lot of quality candidates. And again, it may end up being something that's shared.
I think you're in contract negotiations now, or at least they've started. I got to ask you, this job to me seems like a nightmare from a distance. You do have a good team that mitigates it to some degree, but why do you want to do this more? I mean, this is how many years, 7, 8 years for you? You really want to do this many more years?
This is my 8th year.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, look, it has its challenges and its moments but that's part of big time sports, and at the end of the day, like, to be able to compete with this uniform on this stage, with the opportunity that we have year in and year out, that ownership and the front office provide us with, and the people that I get to do it with, I love it. And the competition of it all, to go compete between the lines. Well, me now just outside the lines, night in and night out on this stage with so much on the line, day in and day out. There's nothing better. And I don't have a world championship yet either. So, that continues to be fuel that I've been in this game all my life and been close. And I want to get there, and I want to do it with these guys. So that keeps that fire burning to come back.
I do find it fascinating that the two managers in the World Series last year both go into this year is on their last year of their contract. And we're talking about two of the guys Dave Roberts with literally the highest winning percentage in regular season history, and you're in the top 10 someplace in there. So it's an interesting thing. Let me ask you about the guy who's been your ace for the last few years, which is Garrett Cole. He wins the Cy Young in 2023 as what he almost has always been, both a horse and an elite pitcher, like putting it together for few guys in the current game do. And then last year, missed 2.5 months early, has the bizarre play with Devers on the field. He has the not cover first base in the World Series. And then the Yankees, say no to picking up a 5th year. He goes out in free agency for 24 hours and then comes back. Where do you think your ace is, both mentally and physically, right now?
Oh, I think he's ready to go. He's had a really good winter. Faced live hitters the other day. What's interesting about last year, and that comes back to, hey, it's baseball, Susan. It's like Garrett, we find out a few weeks into spring training, right, is going to be down for an extended period. And it's like, oh my gosh, how are we going to do this? And it's like, one of the reasons we won the East last year was the strength and consistency of our starting pitching, especially the first 2-3 months of the year. We got off to a really good start on the strength of obviously what Juan and Aaron and what some of our guys were doing. But and I would argue in those first couple months, doing a lot of really good things, base running wise and defensively, helping us really win some gritty games. But it was our starting rotation, night in and night out, that were giving us a good chance to win. And I think in the first few months before Clark went down, we maybe had one guy miss a turn. I don't think we had a guy miss a turn. We had one guy make a spot start. It was, I think, Cody Petit in Cleveland when we had a doubleheader. So they were so consistent. And who would have thought that when the disaster of your ace going down for an extended period? What I really liked about Garrett is he got better as he came back. So, came back, first few were a little up and down, and he kind of found his way, finished the season throwing the ball so well, had a really good postseason for us, threw the ball really well, even all the way up to Game 5, might have been his best game of the year from a pitching standpoint. And he's carried that into the offseason. He's had a good winter. He's ready to go, and my expectation is that he's gonna be our ace and hopefully our horse again. hopefully we got a few more guys that fit that bill as well.
I'm going to ask you about somebody else who was in the rotation and doing a good job, at least for the first half of last year, and that's Marcus Stroman. I know this is a little dangerous. I read it on Twitter that he unfollowed the Yankees and some social media. Obviously we know it's out there that the Yankees have been looking at potential trades for him.
The unfollow, though, was like a standard scrub that he does that was actually very coincidental. Anyway, go ahead.
Okay. Well, he did. I guess he did. That's confirmation. Yeah. He did unfollow the Yankees.
Yeah.
It doesn't look good to me, but from the distance. But how is he? Have you talked to him yet? He's obviously a very smart guy with talent. He's certainly been good for a half each of the last couple years. Is there some strategy to pitch him less at the beginning? And how is he mentally? I know even if the unfollow was a rote and not anything should be read into it. It didn't look great.
Yeah. To me, he's in a really good spot. It is what it is, the situation, right? And there's obviously been a lot of noise around it. I'm sure on some level he's heard that and gets that. I had a very good talk with him this morning, after physicals. He and I have a very good relationship. I feel like he is in a good mental place. I feel like he's physically ready to go, acknowledging, there's, some awkwardness with, where does he slot in this light? The reality is I'm getting him ready to go. We're going to get him ready to start. And, we're such a long way away from now and opening day. And for example, last season, like we said, we were remarkably healthy in our starting rotation. That said, we still needed someone at the start of the year when Cole was down. You needed another guy when Clark Schmidt went down. So things happen. Most teams go into the year with 6, 7, 8 deep that hopefully can play a real role as a real starting pitcher. The reality is he's still very good. He's still very capable. And I know he's ready to go. And, we'll attack everything as the spring and as the season unfolds.
So as we wrap this up, I want to tell you what I think is remarkable about being with the New York Yankees. I was there for the half hour you talked earlier today to reporters. Nobody asked you a question about the highest paid lefty starter in history in free agency, Max Fried, right? Like you didn't get asked. And we've somehow gotten through 30 minutes here, and I haven't asked you. And as my last question, I don't want to ask you about Max Fried. I actually want to ask you about something else, which is, I want to close this. So it feels like you have so many kind of established, terrific players. And I feel so much of this season comes down to, do Volpe and Austin Wells take another step towards, they're playing the middle of the diamond. They're going to play a lot. I mean, Volpe plays every day. You played Wells almost like a traditional starting catcher down the stretch last year. Who are they in 2025 to you, and how vital?
Yeah. So, right, on balance, we were a really good offensive team last year, right? And obviously, so a lot of the talk, but now how do you replace that with Juan Soto? And it's like, we went out and we got Goldschmidt. We went out and we got Bellinger. But like you said, we hope where we also make up some of that loss. Obviously, very difficult to replace Juan Soto, but where we hope there's a real jump offensively for Anthony Volpe. We hope there's a more elongated jump for Austin Wells, where we saw in the middle of the season where, man, he looked like a middle of the order impact hitter, and we believe that's what he is. We feel like Jason Dominguez, healthy and getting the opportunity to play, has a chance to be a very good offensive player. So those are some of the things that we are counting on, that we're hopeful on, that help, jolt us up a little bit offensively, while also, I think, at least on paper, probably being a little better in the starting rotation, being a little bit better in the bullpen, hopefully in our athleticism and our defense being a little bit better. Those are the areas where you have that optimism or hope that we can be whatever, as good, better, however you want to line it up compared to last year.
All right. So it's going to be next time you're on with us, we'll ask you a bunch of questions about Max Fried. For this time, congratulations on the Eagles. I hope your team stays healthy, and so do you through spring training. And thanks so much, Aaron, for joining us on the show with Joel, Sherman, and Jon Heyman.
Yeah, good to be on with you guys. Take care. I'll see you guys a lot.
John and I, of course, thank Aaron Boone for joining us on the show. John, hit or error?
I'm going to say hit. I think it's great that we have two delightful guys in New York managing the team. We just saw Aaron Boone. He's fantastic with the media. You know, he was on ESPN, so he's well trained, but he's just a nice, delightful guy. He was always that way. He was that way when he was a teenager. I was covering his dad's team. Yes, I am that old, Bob Boone, as a player back in the 80s, and he was a young teenager, about 14, 15, hanging around the ballpark on occasion. And he's just a terrific gentleman, and I'm glad he's going to be around a while as the Yankee manager, as it appears that they probably will extend him.
How was it covering Ray Boone, his grandfather?
I didn't do that one.
Not that
But Bob Boone as a player, that's not good. I got my baseball writer card. I'm number 41 now. My goal is never to make it to single digits. Only
that's 40. Behind you, I'm 44.
You're 44. Okay.
So Hank Aaron. John, I asked the question about Devin Williams in the when we were talking to Aaron Boone, and you commented on it. So for hit or error, I'm going to give. Then you will see how much wildfire, because I once wrote about this. For the traditional Yankee fan, they hate when you do this. I'm with you. I think the Yankees should end this rule, and here's why. First of all, every player, the second they leave the Yankees, the first thing they do is grow a beard, right? And then all their players in the offseason grow beards, and all you need is one player to protest this, to actually say, like, if they were not a player who signed with them, if you sign with the Yankees in free agency, you're accepting the team rules. But if, say, you are Devin Williams or somebody else, Cody Bellinger, and you get traded to the Yankees, and you say, well, I didn't agree to be here. You think you have control of my face? How, like I don't have a curse word on my forehead. I have hair on my chin. And it's none of your business. And I think the Yankees don't want to be in that dispute at some point. And I'm blown away it hasn't come up yet, where some player hasn't said, no, I didn't ask to be here, and you're not going to tell me if I could have a beard or not. And just to avoid that, I get it. It differentiates them. It's something that meant a lot to the patriarch of the organization, George Steinbrenner, and Hal is trying to keep that legacy, and Aaron Boone is serving as a lieutenant to keep it. I think they should change it before they have an issue.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's.
But I don't think they have a leg to stand on if they have.
I don't get it at all. I encouraged, and of course he didn't listen to me, Garrett Cole, to keep the beard, because I figured the guy they paid him. What did they pay him? $324 million. What are they going to do? But he's a get along guy, and he did it. I actually think it ruined Rodon's first season when he just went with the mustache. It didn't work. The mustache does not work. It only works for like 3 people in the world, I think. And I think that cost him a season. You remember you were covering the team when Mattingly had the dispute with Mattingly over his long hair. I mean, there's enough already with the hair. I'm with you 100%, as you know.
Yeah, Stump Merrill was trying to uphold Yankee dignity on that length of hair for Don Mattingly. You talk about old, we were beat guys back then, John.
Well, it's been a while. I was at number 40. What am I, 41 now? Jeez, not good.
By the way, in case the listeners, the viewers don't know, the lower the number, the longer you've been in the association.
The older you are. That's a nice way to put it. The lower the number, the older you are. Yes. I can't believe I'm only 3 ahead of you.
Yes. You know who's young? Tommy Hogan, our producer, who is spry and jumps in at a moment's notice when we're in spring training. We go, we got Aaron Boone. Can you jump in, Tommy? And Tommy always jumps in and helps us. We always appreciate that from Tommy Hogan. Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to a podcast, follow us, rate us, review us. It does help. The New York Post Sports YouTube page, give us a view. And John, no turning back now. Spring training has begun. We'll be flip-flopping, I think, next week, where I'll be where you are and you are where I am. And then we'll both end up in Arizona at some point and then back to Florida. But it's begun. We love to do the podcast. Please keep sticking with us on the show with Joel Sherman and Jon Heyman.